a stranger to the alien tribe. He turned into the legend they remember. The human ship tore through the atmosphere of Zythera, flames licking its metallic sides. Captain Elias Rourke gritted his teeth, gripping the control console as alarms blared. The planet below was strange and beautiful, a swirl of glowing forests and deep blue rivers, unlike anything he had ever seen. But beauty did not guarantee safety, and Elias knew he had little time. The ship shuddered violently. Metal groaned, sparks flew, and one last, deafening crack echoed through the cabin before everything went black. When he woke, Elias was lying on the soft, mossy ground. Pain radiated from his shoulder, and the acrid smell of burnt machinery filled his nose. The ship was gone, reduced to a smoldering crater nearby. He forced himself to his feet, ignoring the sharp sting in his leg. His first thought was simple: survive. His second was just as urgent: understand this world. Zythera was alive in ways Elias had never imagined. The forest shimmered faintly, trees glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Strange sounds echoed through the undergrowth, bird-like calls, soft rustles, and something deeper, almost like whispers carried on the wind. Every shadow seemed to shift when he looked at it. It was beautiful, yes, but also alien and dangerous. Elias stumbled through the forest, relying on his training. He scanned for water, food, and shelter, all while listening for any signs of life. Hours passed, and as night fell, he found himself on the edge of a clearing. In the dim, bluish light, he saw them, figures moving gracefully, their skin glowing faintly in patterns of soft blue and green. He froze. The Veyari. They were unlike any creature he had ever encountered. Tall, slender, with elongated limbs, their eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. Small tendrils, almost like antennae, extended from their heads, moving constantly as if sensing the air around them. They spoke without words, communicating in a series of mental pulses he could somehow feel faintly in the air. Elias had read about telepathic species, but to experience one was something entirely different. He ducked behind a tree, holding his breath as he watched them. They moved with precision, their coordination perfect. One of them seemed to notice him, tilting its head, the faint glow in its eyes intensifying. Elias froze, knowing that being seen could mean immediate danger. The Veyari communicated quickly, silently, and after a tense moment they moved on, disappearing into the forest. Elias exhaled slowly. That had been close, too close. He knew he could not survive long without understanding these beings. He needed to study them, learn their ways, and find a place for himself on this strange planet. Days passed. Elias survived by scavenging what remained of his ship and using the forest to his advantage. He fashioned rudimentary tools and weapons from the local flora and rocks, experimenting cautiously. He discovered that certain plants could be eaten safely, while others caused rashes or worse. He marked trails and noted patterns in the forest, always keeping an eye out for the Veyari. He observed them from a distance, learning how they hunted, gathered, and communicated. Their skills were extraordinary. They moved silently, tracked prey with precision, and coordinated as a single organism, almost as if the forest itself moved with them. Elias realized quickly that he could not overpower them. His strength alone would not be enough. Only his mind could give him an edge. Then, one evening, disaster struck. While Elias was gathering water from a stream, a pack of Zytheran predators attacked. They were enormous, with razor-sharp claws and glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. Elias fought bravely, but his human strength was no match for the ferocious creatures. Just as a predator lunged, a pair of glowing figures appeared, moving faster than he could follow. The Veyari intervened, driving the creatures away with skill and precision. Elias collapsed, panting and exhausted. The Veyari stood silently, their glowing eyes fixed on him. He expected hostility, maybe even a fatal strike, but none came. Instead, one of them, the tallest and most commanding, stepped forward, extending a hand, not in greeting but in assessment. Elias realized they were deciding whether he was a threat or something else. He remained still, showing no sudden movements. Slowly, the tension in the clearing eased. The Veari communicated among themselves, and Elias, though he could not understand their words, felt the subtle shift in the air. Curiosity had replaced suspicion. Over the next few weeks, Elias attempted cautious interaction. He left small gifts near their settlements, simple tools, fire-starting devices, and containers to hold water. At first, the Veari ignored them, then cautiously investigated. One young scout, Lyra, began observing him from a distance, her curiosity overtaking caution. Elias could see the intelligence in her glowing eyes, and he realized she might be the key to understanding the tribe. He approached carefully one morning, hands raised to show he carried nothing dangerous. Lyra watched, her body tense, but she did not flee. He spoke softly, using basic gestures and offering a small tool he had made. Slowly, she reached out and touched it, then looked at him with what he interpreted as cautious approval. From that moment, a fragile bond began. Elias began to learn their language in small pieces, recognizing patterns in their mental communication. Lyra, in turn, learned his gestures and sounds. Communication was slow but possible. Through patience, Elias learned about their culture, their rituals, and their deep connection to the planet. The Veari were a proud and secretive people, distrustful of outsiders because of past invasions by other species. Elias knew that he could never fully erase their fear, but he could show that humans could be allies, not threats. Every act of kindness, every small demonstration of skill, slowly chipped away at the wall between them. Then came the test. A natural disaster struck. A violent storm, unlike anything Elias had experienced, ripped through the forest. Trees fell, rivers swelled, and the ground trembled. Elias acted quickly, saving a young Veari caught under debris. Lyra screamed in alarm, and others rushed to help. Elias' human strength and quick thinking saved lives, but it also exposed him fully to the tribe. Now there was no hiding. Some elders were angry, but many young Veari were impressed. Elias stood tall, exhausted but unafraid, showing that he was not a threat. That night the tribe gathered around him, their glowing forms illuminating the wreckage. It was the first time Elias felt he belonged, if only slightly, in this strange, alien world. He realized then that survival would not be enough. To live here, he had to earn respect, not just from a few, but from the entire tribe. It would take courage, intelligence, and patience. He had already begun to show them what humans could offer, but this was only the beginning. The real challenge had yet to come. Elias lay beneath the glowing canopy of Zythra, staring at the alien stars above. He thought of Earth, of home, and of the life he had left behind. But he also thought of the Veari and the strange connection he had begun to forge with them. In this world of danger and beauty, he saw an opportunity not just to survive, but to make a mark, to become something more than a stranger. As sleep overcame him, he felt the subtle mental pulse of the Veari nearby. Not a threat, not a warning, just awareness. It was as if the planet itself had accepted him in its own way. And in that moment, Elias knew that he had the chance to do something extraordinary. He had arrived as a stranger, but maybe, just maybe, he could become a part of their story. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and perhaps the first real test of his place among the Veari. But for now, he was alive, and the first threads of trust had been woven. And for a man who had once thought he was alone in the universe, that was everything. The morning sun filtered through the glowing canopy of Zythra, casting soft streaks of blue and green across the forest floor. Captain Elias' work stirred, muscles aching from the previous day's storm. He had survived, and the Veari had survived. That night he had slept under a shelter of fallen branches and leaves, but despite the exhaustion, sleep had been uneasy. The tribe's presence lingered in his mind, always watching, always alert. Elias rose slowly, testing his shoulder. It ached less than before, but the bruise was deep, and the cut along his arm still stung. He knew he could not remain idle. Survival on Zythra required constant effort, constant vigilance. But more than survival, he wanted trust, and he knew trust would take time. Lyra appeared silently, as if materializing from the shadows. Her glowing skin shimmered faintly in the morning light, and her eyes held a mixture of curiosity and caution. Elias offered a small nod, and she responded with a gesture he was beginning to understand as acknowledgement. He spent the morning observing her. Lyra moved with precision, checking traps, inspecting edible plants, and communicating with others through mental pulses. Elias marveled at her skills. Each movement seemed deliberate, almost ritualistic, yet natural. He realized the Veyari had lived on this planet for generations and knew it intimately. They were not just survivors, they were masters of this world. Elias decided he needed to contribute in a way that mattered. He had learned from the previous encounter that actions spoke louder than words, especially when words were scarce. He gathered materials from the forest and began crafting simple tools, improving upon what he had salvaged from his ship. Using stone, metal scraps, and wood, he fashioned a set of fishing implements and traps, designed to increase the tribe's efficiency without disrupting their methods. It took hours. Each strike of his makeshift hammer, each careful carving, was precise and deliberate. He focused not only on the functionality of the tools but also on their durability. The Veyari valued endurance, he had noticed, and tools that failed quickly would earn nothing but suspicion. By mid-afternoon, Elias had completed a small collection, arranging them neatly near the edge of the clearing where the tribe often gathered. He stepped back and waited. Hours passed. The Veyari approached cautiously. Lyra was the first to inspect the tools. She examined each piece, her glowing fingers tracing the edges, her eyes reflecting both wonder and skepticism. Elias held his breath. She looked at him, and for the first time he thought he saw understanding, not just curiosity but acknowledgement of skill. Lyra tapped the ground lightly, a signal. Other Veyari came forward. They tested the tools carefully, mimicking the methods Elias had intended. They spoke among themselves in rapid pulses, and though he could not comprehend their language fully, he felt the approval in the air. It was subtle but unmistakable. They had accepted his offering. Encouraged, Elias spent the following days teaching small improvements, always careful not to overstep. He showed them how to sharpen their hunting blades more efficiently, how to reinforce shelters against storms, and how to track prey using patterns they had not noticed. Every demonstration was met with a mixture of suspicion and fascination. Some elders whispered warnings among themselves, but the younger Veyari, particularly Lyra, began to follow his methods. During one afternoon, Elias joined a hunting party. He moved silently, keeping to the edge of the group. The Veyari hunted with an elegance that was mesmerizing. They communicated without words, their movements perfectly synchronized. Elias realized that despite his ingenuity, he was clumsy by comparison. Yet, when a large, swift creature appeared unexpectedly, Elias reacted instantly, using a trap he had fashioned to catch it. The tribe froze briefly, then released a series of pulses that to Elias felt like a wave of approval. He had contributed in a way only a human could. That night, Elias sat near the campfire, exhausted but satisfied. Lyra approached him and, for the first time, initiated a direct exchange. Using gestures and mental pulses, she indicated curiosity about his world, about his ship, about the humans he came from. Elias smiled faintly and began drawing simple shapes in the dirt, explaining his past as best as he could. It was crude, slow, and imperfect, but it was understood. As the days turned into weeks, Elias became more than a stranger. He still had no official place within the tribe, but his presence was tolerated, then accepted, then respected. He repaired damaged structures, improved hunting methods, and even helped care for the young and injured. His ingenuity, combined with his willingness to adapt to their ways, gradually earned him recognition. Yet, not all were convinced. Some elders watched him with suspicion. They murmured warnings about relying on outsiders, citing old tales of invasions and betrayal. Elias felt the weight of their gaze, the constant reminder that one mistake could undo all his progress. He did not resent them, he understood caution. Trust was earned, not given, and he intended to earn it fully. One evening, while exploring the outskirts of the forest, Elias discovered signs of another presence. Footprints, partially hidden under foliage, led toward the tribe's territory. He followed them cautiously and realized that a rival alien clan was approaching. Unlike the Veyari, these intruders moved aggressively, leaving destruction in their wake. Elias understood immediately. The tribe was in danger. He returned to the tribe, warning them as best as he could. His words were crude, gestures broad, but Lyra understood. She relayed his warning to the elders. At first there was resistance, disbelief. But when the first signs of the rival clan appeared, smoke rising from the far edges of the forest, strange noises echoing through the trees, the Veyari had no choice but to prepare. Elias worked tirelessly, helping fortify defenses and strategize escape routes. He combined his knowledge of human tactics with what he had learned about the Veyari's natural abilities. The tribe was cautious, reluctant to accept guidance from an outsider, but they had no alternative. When the rival clan arrived, the Veyari were ready in ways they had never been before. The battle was intense. The rival clan attacked with ferocity, their strength and numbers overwhelming. Yet, Elias' strategies allowed the Veyari to counter effectively. Traps were set in clever locations, ambush points were prepared, and every Veyari knew exactly where to position themselves. Elias coordinated as best as he could, his human perspective adding a new layer to their natural instincts. In the chaos, Elias saw Lyra fighting bravely, her glowing form darting between attackers. She signaled to him, and he understood immediately. Together they led a counterattack, using both Veyari agility and human strategy. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The rival clan, unprepared for such coordination, faltered. One by one, they retreated, leaving the forest in a tense, uneasy silence. The aftermath was quiet but powerful. The Veyari had survived, and many looked at Elias in a new light. He was still an outsider, yes, but he had proven his worth. He had not only survived among them, but had contributed to their survival in a way no other human could have. Lyra approached him again, her eyes glowing with admiration and something deeper, trust. As night fell, Elias sat alone, reflecting. He had come to Zythra as a stranger, injured and alone, with nothing but his survival instinct and his human ingenuity. Now, he had allies, friends, and a place, however tentative, in this alien world. Yet, he knew the journey was far from over. The tribe had begun to accept him, but he still needed to earn the trust of all, especially the elders who watched him with suspicion. Elias realized that survival alone was no longer enough. To truly belong, he needed to prove that he was more than just a clever human. He needed to show courage, wisdom, and a willingness to understand and respect the Veyari way of life. Only then would he stop being a stranger and start becoming a part of their story. The forest hummed softly around him, the glowing canopy above swaying gently in the night wind. For the first time, Elias felt a deep sense of purpose. He had a chance not only to survive but to leave a mark on this world, to become part of something greater than himself. The thought was both daunting and exhilarating. He closed his eyes, letting the calm of the forest seep into him. The Veyari were not just observers. They were guardians of this land, and soon he would learn what it truly meant to fight beside them, to understand their ways, and to protect what he had come to respect. Tomorrow, he thought, would bring new challenges. But for now, Elias allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. He had survived, he had learned, and he had begun to earn trust. The first steps toward becoming something more than a stranger had been taken, and the journey ahead, though uncertain, held the promise of legend. And so, under the glowing trees of Zythra, a human who had once been alone began the slow, careful process of becoming part of a story that the alien tribe would one day remember. The forest of Zythra was quiet in the early morning, but the silence was deceptive. Captain Elias Rourke moved carefully among the glowing trees, scanning the horizon. The rival clan that had attacked the Veyari before was not gone. They had regrouped, and Elias knew they would strike again. He had spent the past weeks preparing with the tribe, teaching them new techniques, setting traps, and improving defenses. Yet nothing could replace the unpredictable chaos of a real battle. Lyra appeared beside him, moving with her usual grace. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting both determination and concern. Elias nodded to her, signaling that he was ready. She responded with a series of pulses that he had learned to interpret as agreement and strategy. Together, they made their way toward the edge of the clearing, where the first signs of the enemy were already visible: disturbances in the soil, broken branches, and the faint, sharp scent of the rival clan. The Veyari were waiting, hidden among the trees and underbrush. Elias had spent days mapping out the terrain, marking ambush points and choke zones. He had learned that the Veyari excelled at silent movement and telepathic coordination, but they had never faced an enemy with the same cunning Elias brought from human tactical experience. He hoped that by combining both strengths, they could turn the odds in their favor. The first attack came at midday. Shadows moved quickly through the forest, figures charging toward the Veyari with brute force and weapons unfamiliar to Elias. The tribe responded immediately, splitting into smaller units to flank the enemy while others engaged directly. Elias moved alongside them, guiding and adjusting their positions, signaling when to retreat or advance. He was careful to let the Veyari take the lead, intervening only where his knowledge could give them an advantage. The clash was intense. The rival clan fought with ferocity, using brute strength and numbers to overwhelm. But Elias had anticipated their approach, and the traps he had helped set caught several attackers off guard. Pitfalls concealed with foliage, snaring vines, and rigged rocks turned the tide at key moments. The Veyari moved like shadows, striking swiftly and retreating, their glowing forms flickering through the forest. Elias found himself in the midst of chaos, guiding a group of Veyari through a narrow path that led to a natural choke point. He shouted instructions, pointing to weaknesses in the enemy's formation. The Veyari, trusting his human perspective, followed precisely. One of the attackers lunged at him, but Elias sidestepped, using the enemy's momentum against him and sending him tumbling into a trap. Lyra watched from above, her glowing eyes wide with respect. Hours passed like this, a continuous cycle of attack and counterattack. Elias realized that the Veyari were learning from him even as he learned from them. They combined their telepathic coordination with his strategies, creating unpredictable movements that bewildered the rival clan. Slowly, the attackers began to falter. Fatigue set in and their confidence wavered against a force they could not understand. At one point, the enemy's leader, a massive figure with jagged markings on his skin, attempted a direct assault on the tribe's center. Elias recognized the danger immediately. He grabbed a fallen branch, reinforcing it as a weapon, and moved to intercept. Lyra appeared beside him, and together they launched a coordinated counterattack. Using both Veyari agility and human tactics, they distracted the leader, leading him into a pit trap that Elias had prepared earlier. The leader fell, caught but not mortally harmed, his pride wounded. The sight of their leader captured broke the morale of the rival clan. They retreated quickly, leaving the forest in an uneasy silence. The Veyari, though victorious, were exhausted, and Elias could see the weight of the battle in their glowing forms. He moved among them, helping the injured, offering words of encouragement and reinforcing defenses. He felt a sense of pride unlike anything he had experienced before. He had not only survived but had helped the Veyari achieve victory. After the battle, the tribe gathered in the clearing. Elders who had once watched him with suspicion now studied him with quiet respect. Elias felt the weight of their gaze, understanding that his place among them was changing. He was still an outsider, but he was no longer just a stranger. He had proven himself through action, courage, and strategy. Lyra approached him again, her glowing skin bright in the dim light of the setting sun. She extended her hand, and Elias took it, feeling the subtle warmth of trust. She communicated through pulses that he had come to understand as admiration and gratitude. For the first time, Elias felt a true sense of belonging, not complete, not permanent, but real enough to give him hope. That night, Elias sat near the campfire, reflecting on the events of the day. The battle had tested him in ways he had not anticipated. His human instincts, combined with his knowledge of tactics and strategy, had been crucial in saving the tribe. Yet he also realized that trust was fragile. One mistake, one misjudgment, could undo everything he had worked for. He knew he needed to continue learning, adapting, and proving himself if he was to remain part of the tribe. As he tended to his minor wounds, Elias thought about the rival clan and what they represented. They were not just a threat to the Veyari. They were a reminder that this world was dangerous, unpredictable, and full of challenges. He had arrived as a stranger, but every encounter, every act of courage was shaping him into something more. He was becoming a part of the story of Zythra, a thread woven into the lives of the Veyari. In the following days, Elias worked closely with the tribe, reinforcing their settlements, improving hunting strategies, and teaching them new defensive techniques. The Veyari responded eagerly, especially the younger members who saw in him a source of knowledge and strength. The elders remained cautious, but even they could not ignore the improvements that his guidance had brought. Elias also spent time learning from the Veyari. He observed their rituals, their methods of communication, and their deep connection to the planet. He realized that their strength lay not only in their physical abilities, but in their unity, their understanding of each other, and their ability to live in harmony with Zythra. He began to integrate these lessons into his own thinking, blending human ingenuity with alien wisdom. One evening, while exploring a nearby river, Elias discovered signs of new dangers. Tracks and markings suggested that another, even larger clan was moving closer. The realization was sobering. The tribe had survived the last attack, but future threats could be more organized, more dangerous, and less predictable. Elias knew that preparation would be key. He returned to the tribe and shared his observations with Lyra and the elders. Using gestures and mental pulses, he outlined strategies for reconnaissance, early warning, and coordinated defense. Some elders were skeptical, questioning the need for such measures, but the younger Veyari supported him. Elias felt the beginnings of influence within the tribe, a sign that his efforts were being recognized. As the sun set over the glowing forests of Zythra, Elias reflected on his journey. He had come to this planet alone, injured, and uncertain. Now he had allies, respect, and a growing sense of purpose. He had faced danger, guided the tribe to victory, and begun to forge a bond that transcended species. Yet he also knew that the path ahead would not be easy. The rival clans were still out there, and new challenges would inevitably arise. Despite the uncertainty, Elias felt a renewed sense of determination. He had proven that a human could make a difference, that courage, intelligence, and cooperation could overcome even the most daunting odds. He had also learned that true belonging required patience, respect, and a willingness to learn from those around him. As night enveloped the forest, Elias lay beneath the glowing canopy, listening to the soft whispers of the trees and the gentle pulses of the Veyari around him. For the first time, he felt a deep connection to this world, a sense of being part of something greater than himself. He was no longer just a stranger. He was a participant in the unfolding story of Zythra, a thread in the tapestry of the Veyari's lives. And in that moment, Elias understood that the legend he would one day become had already begun. It was not built on power alone, nor on fear, but on courage, ingenuity, and the bonds forged between species. The journey was far from over, but the foundation had been laid. Tomorrow, and every day after, would offer new challenges, new opportunities, and new ways to prove that humans could not only survive among the stars, but could leave a mark that others would remember. Elias closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the fire and the subtle presence of the tribe around him fill him with resolve. He had faced the first true test, and he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. The Vayari had seen his courage and his mind, and slowly they were beginning to accept him as one of their own. As he drifted into sleep, he felt the pulse of the forest, the rhythm of the tribe, and the quiet acknowledgement of Lyra nearby. He knew that battles, both physical and mental, lay ahead. But for the first time since his arrival, he was ready. He was no longer just a stranger. He was part of something larger, a force that could shape the future of this alien world, and perhaps, one day, become the legend the Vayari would remember for generations. Days turned into weeks, and life on Zythra slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. Captain Elia's work had proven himself in battle, yet he knew that true acceptance required more than courage. It required understanding, patience, and respect for the Vayari way of life. Every morning, he awoke with determination, ready to teach, to learn, and to contribute. The tribe no longer saw him as just a stranger, but as a valuable presence, someone whose knowledge could help them survive and thrive. Elias spent the early hours with Lyra, exploring the forest and learning its secrets. She guided him through hidden paths, teaching him which plants were safe, which rivers were reliable for fishing, and how to interpret subtle signs in the terrain. Elias, in turn, taught her simple human techniques, ways to strengthen traps, to build more durable shelters, and to improvise tools from materials they had not thought to use. Their partnership grew into a quiet camaraderie, built on mutual respect and trust. The younger members of the tribe watched Elias with growing curiosity. They were fascinated by his ingenuity and the things he could do that no Vayari had attempted before. He showed them how to create small devices for gathering food more efficiently, ways to store water, and simple methods for reinforcing their homes against storms. The children and adolescents began following him, eager to learn and experiment. In these moments, Elias felt a sense of pride he had never known on Earth. His knowledge, his human perspective, was valued here, not for dominance but for its usefulness and creativity. Not all the tribe was entirely convinced. Some elders remained wary, quietly observing every action, every word. They had seen outsiders before and remembered the harm they could bring. Elias respected their caution. He never tried to force his ideas or to push for recognition. He acted with humility, demonstrating his value through deeds rather than words. Slowly, even the skeptical elders began to notice the improvements. Shelters held up better during storms, hunting parties returned with more success, and the tribe seemed more confident in their daily lives. One afternoon, while walking near the edge of the forest, Elias noticed signs of another rival clan approaching. He quickly gathered the elders and Lyra, explaining what he had seen. Using gestures and simple drawings in the dirt, he outlined possible strategies for monitoring and defending against this new threat. This time, the tribe responded without hesitation. They trusted his judgment and his ability to anticipate danger. As the rival clan drew closer, Elias helped organize a network of scouts, including Lyra, to watch the surrounding territory. He instructed them on patterns of movement, signs to watch for, and how to communicate silently through the mental pulses the Vayari naturally used. He also devised contingencies, showing how they could regroup or retreat without panicking if the enemy advanced too quickly. His human approach, combined with the Vayari's natural instincts, created a defense stronger than anything they had faced before. When the new threat finally arrived, Elias and the tribe were ready. Unlike the previous battle, they were prepared for multiple approaches and ambushes. The rival clan, expecting chaos and surprise, found themselves countered at every turn. The Vayari moved like a single organism, guided by Elias' strategies. Pitfalls, traps, and clever diversions slowed the attackers. Elias moved through the battlefield calmly, coordinating, advising, and occasionally intervening where needed. He was not just fighting for survival. He was leading by example, blending human ingenuity with alien skill. After hours of conflict, the enemy retreated once more. The Veyari, though tired, emerged victorious, and this time the elders expressed their approval more openly. They no longer whispered doubts. They acknowledged Elia's contribution openly, praising his courage and insight. Lyra approached him afterward, her eyes shining with pride. Elias felt a deep satisfaction, but he also knew that his journey was not yet complete. Acceptance from the tribe was only one step. To truly leave a mark, he had to become a symbol, someone whose presence would be remembered long after he was gone. Elias began to focus on long-term improvements. He introduced techniques to store and purify water, methods for preserving food, and ways to organize hunting and gathering that minimized risk. He also worked on strengthening the tribe's shelters, building structures that could withstand storms and protect against predators. Slowly, the Veyari began adopting these methods into their daily lives. What had once been foreign and unusual was becoming part of their culture. The young Veyari, especially, were eager to learn. They followed Elias everywhere, asking questions and experimenting with new ideas. He encouraged their curiosity, teaching them to combine Veyari agility and senses with human problem-solving. It was a slow process, but over time, these lessons began to take root. Elias realized that true influence was not about authority. It was about inspiring others to see possibilities they had never considered. One evening, as the tribe gathered around a communal fire, Elias noticed the elders quietly observing him. There was no hostility now, only recognition. They had seen his contributions, his courage, and his ability to think beyond the limitations of the forest. Some of them even sought his advice on matters of survival and strategy, something that would have been unthinkable weeks before. Elias felt a deep sense of humility. He had earned their trust not by words, but by action, and that trust was a powerful bond. As days passed, Elias also began to understand the deeper values of the Veyari. They were not just warriors or hunters. They were guardians of their world, deeply connected to the forests, rivers, and creatures of Zythera. He respected their traditions and never sought to replace them. Instead, he offered tools and ideas to enhance their way of life, always mindful of their culture and beliefs. This careful balance of respect and innovation gradually made him more than just a helpful outsider. He was becoming a bridge between human knowledge and Veyari tradition. Lyra often accompanied him on walks through the forest, and their conversations, though limited, became more meaningful. She shared stories of the tribe's history, of heroes who had shaped their culture, and of challenges they had faced over generations. Elias listened intently, asking questions and offering insights from his own experiences. Through these exchanges, he learned not only about survival but about the values that define the Veyari: loyalty, courage, and harmony with the world around them. Elias realized that if he wanted to leave a lasting mark, he had to become more than a teacher. He had to become a symbol. A human who had arrived as a stranger and had helped the tribe survive could be remembered for generations, not just as a helper, but as a legend. He began to focus on acts that would leave such a mark, guiding hunts that would teach future generations, organizing defenses that would become standard practice, and sharing knowledge that would strengthen the tribe in ways they could carry forward. One day, while inspecting a newly built shelter, Elias noticed a young Veyari struggling to carry a heavy bundle. Without hesitation, he stepped in to help, showing not only strength but teamwork. The young Veyari looked at him with admiration, and Elias realized that these small actions, repeated over time, were the foundation of legacy. It was not glory he sought, but respect earned through consistent action and guidance. As the sun set, casting soft light through the glowing canopy, Elias stood with Lyra, watching the tribe move through the clearing. Their coordinated movements, their confidence in their abilities, and their trust in him were all proof of progress. He felt a quiet pride, tempered by humility. He was still human, still an outsider in many ways, but he was no longer just a visitor. He was part of something enduring. The elders approached, and Elias prepared for their scrutiny. But this time, their expressions were not of doubt, they were of acknowledgement. One elder stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder, a gesture Elias had come to recognize as respect. The elder communicated through pulses, and though he could not understand every word, the sentiment was clear. He had proven himself, and his presence was valued. Elias felt a deep sense of accomplishment, but he also understood that this was only one chapter in a much larger story. The rival clans were still out there, and the challenges of life on Zythera would never cease. But he had learned something essential. Human courage, ingenuity, and determination could not only survive but could enhance the strength of others. By respecting the Veari and contributing in meaningful ways, he had begun to create a legacy that could endure far beyond a single lifetime. As night fell, Elias sat near the fire, reflecting on the journey so far. He had arrived on Zythera as a stranger, injured and uncertain. He had faced danger, guided the tribe to victory, and begun to teach and inspire. He had formed bonds with Lyra and others, slowly earning the trust of the tribe. And he had begun to see the first glimpses of a lasting legacy, a mark that could shape the Veari culture for generations. Elias closed his eyes, listening to the soft hum of the forest and the gentle pulses of the Veari nearby. For the first time, he felt a deep connection not only to the tribe but to the world itself. He understood that legend was not built on strength alone, nor on fear, nor on domination. It was built on courage, wisdom, respect, and the willingness to lift others alongside oneself. And so, as the glowing forests of Zythera shimmered under the stars, Elias Rourke, the human who had once been a stranger, began to step into the role he was destined for. The tribe would remember his deeds, the young would emulate his actions, and the elders would pass down the stories of the human who had not only survived among them but had enhanced their world. He was no longer an outsider. He was becoming a part of their history, a symbol of what courage, ingenuity, and determination could achieve. Time moved differently on Zythera. The glowing forests, the sparkling rivers, and the silent, telepathic hum of the Veari had become familiar to Elias Rourke. He was no longer a stranger. He had fought battles, shared knowledge, and guided the tribe through danger. Yet he knew that to truly be remembered, he had to do more than survive or teach. He had to leave a lasting legacy, a mark that the tribe would carry forward long after he was gone. Elias spent his mornings with the younger Veari, teaching them skills that combined human ingenuity with their natural abilities. He encouraged experimentation, asking them to solve problems in ways he had not considered. Some tried simple inventions, others developed new strategies for hunting or gathering, and some even created small games to test agility and coordination. Each lesson, each experiment, strengthened the tribe's ability to adapt and survive. Lyra became his constant companion. They explored new regions of the forest together, discovering hidden groves, safe water sources, and places that could serve as natural fortifications. Elias learned more about the planet from her guidance than he could have discovered alone. In turn, he showed her and others how to think creatively, to see solutions where none seemed possible. Their relationship had grown into mutual respect and deep friendship, a bond that symbolized the merging of human ingenuity and Veari tradition. The elders, once cautious and skeptical, now sought Elias' advice on important matters. They asked him about strategies to improve the tribe's safety, methods to preserve resources, and ways to prepare for potential threats. Elias responded thoughtfully, always careful to respect their traditions. He knew that true influence was earned, not demanded. His guidance was subtle but impactful, gradually shaping the tribe's practices without undermining their culture. One day, while exploring the outskirts of the territory, Elias noticed signs of another human expedition. A small probe had landed, leaving faint traces in the soil. He realized that others of his kind might be nearby, seeking to explore or colonize Scythera. The thought of reconnecting with humans brought a wave of conflicting emotions. He missed his home world, yet he had grown deeply connected to this alien tribe. He wondered whether to reveal himself to the newcomers or remain with the Veyari, who had begun to trust and rely on him. Elias chose to stay. He had arrived on Scythera as a stranger, but he had found purpose, friendship, and respect among the Veyari. The planet had become home, and the tribe had become family. He understood that his legacy would not come from leaving or returning to Earth, but from the impact he had here, through the knowledge he shared, the lives he helped protect, and the changes he had inspired. In the following months, Elias focused on long-term projects. He helped develop sustainable methods for farming and food storage, adapted hunting strategies to minimize risk, and strengthened shelters to withstand storms and predators. He introduced simple tools for measurement, planning, and construction, allowing the tribe to create structures that were both functional and durable. These improvements became integrated into daily life, quietly transforming the way the Veyari approached survival. Elias also worked on training the young hunters. He combined human tactics with the Veyari's natural abilities, teaching them to think ahead, anticipate dangers, and coordinate in ways they had not attempted before. The young Veyari were eager to learn, experimenting and adapting with enthusiasm. Their success in practice hunts impressed the elders, who began to openly praise Elias' contributions. One evening, a particularly strong storm swept through the forest. Rain fell in sheets, lightning illuminated the glowing trees, and wind threatened to uproot even the sturdiest structures. Elias coordinated efforts to reinforce shelters and guide the tribe to safe areas. His presence, calm and decisive, inspired confidence. The storm passed, and all survived with minimal damage. The elders held a gathering that night, formally acknowledging his role in saving lives and improving the tribe's resilience. Elias felt a quiet pride, knowing that trust had been fully established. Stories of his deeds began to spread beyond the immediate group. Even distant tribes of the Veyari heard whispers of the human who had arrived as a stranger and had guided them to victory, taught them new skills, and helped preserve their way of life. Elias' presence became symbolic, a reminder of courage, intelligence, and collaboration. The young began to emulate his actions, imitating his methods and incorporating human ingenuity into their own problem-solving. Despite all this, Elias never sought glory. He remained humble, emphasizing teamwork, mutual respect, and adaptability. He knew that true legacy was not about being praised or honored. It was about inspiring others to grow, to improve, and to carry forward the lessons he had shared. His focus was on teaching and guiding, leaving a mark that would endure without needing recognition. Years passed, and Elias' impact on the tribe became undeniable. The Veyari who had once doubted him now told stories of his deeds to the young, recounting battles he had fought, innovations he had introduced, and the wisdom he had shared. He became a living legend in their culture, a symbol of how an outsider could enrich and protect the community when acting with courage, respect, and intelligence. Lyra continued to be his closest companion, and together they led expeditions, trained hunters, and explored new regions of Scythera. Their bond had grown into one of mutual understanding and shared purpose. Elias realized that relationships, trust, and knowledge were the true currency of legacy. Strength alone would never have been enough to leave a lasting mark. One day, Elias and Lyra discovered a hidden grove deep within the forest. It was untouched, a place of beauty and peace, with crystal-clear water and plants that glowed softly even in daylight. They decided to establish it as a sanctuary, a safe place where the tribe could retreat during times of danger or simply rest. Elias taught the young Veyari how to reinforce the area and maintain its balance, ensuring that it would remain a symbol of safety and harmony for generations to come. The elders formally recognized his contributions in a quiet ceremony. They communicated through pulses, gestures, and symbols, declaring that Elia's presence had strengthened the tribe in ways that would last beyond his lifetime. They gave him a symbolic title, one previously reserved for legendary heroes born within the tribe. It was an honor, but Elias accepted it not for himself, but as a testament to what humans and Veyari could achieve together. As the years went by, Elias grew older, but his energy, ingenuity, and spirit never waned. He continued to teach, guide, and protect. He became a mentor to generations of Veyari, shaping not only their skills, but also their perspective on life, cooperation, and problem-solving. His presence became woven into the very fabric of the tribe's culture, ensuring that his influence would endure. Even after his time on Zythera came to an end, stories of Elia's work persisted. The young told tales of the human who had arrived as a stranger and had become a guide, a protector, and a teacher. Elders recounted his bravery in battle, his ingenuity, and his respect for the Veyari way of life. The tribe preserved his memory, passing down lessons he had taught and honoring the principles he had demonstrated: courage, intelligence, respect, and cooperation. In time, Elia's story became legend. Children grew up hearing about the human who had turned danger into opportunity, fear into trust, and challenge into growth. His influence shaped generations, blending human ingenuity with Veyari tradition, ensuring that the tribe was stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. One evening, as the twin moons of Zythera rose above the glowing forest, Lyra led a group of young Veyari to the sanctuary that Elias had helped establish. They shared stories, reenacted battles, and demonstrated techniques he had taught. Even though Elias was no longer present in body, his spirit remained alive in every action, every lesson, and every story passed down through the generations. The tribe would remember him forever, not as a conqueror, not as a ruler, but as a human who had arrived as a stranger, who had fought alongside them, who had shared knowledge and courage, and who had become a part of their culture. He was a living symbol of how bravery, intelligence, and respect could bridge worlds, inspire change, and leave a legacy that would never be forgotten. And so, on the glowing planet of Zythera, amidst the forests and rivers, amidst the lives of the Veyari he had touched, Captain Elia's work became more than a visitor. He became legend. The story of the human who had once been a stranger and had turned into the hero they remembered would be told for generations, a reminder that even in the vastness of the universe, one individual could make a difference. In the hearts and minds of the Veyari, his memory glowed as brightly as the forest around them. Every act of courage, every lesson taught, and every life saved carried forward his legacy. And although Elias had come from another world, he had become a part of Zythera in a way no outsider ever had, a symbol of unity, hope, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. Even as centuries passed and the forests of Zythera continued to glow, the story endured. Young Veyari would look to the stars, imagining the human who had once walked among them, and find courage in the knowledge that greatness could come from understanding, effort, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. The legend of Elia's work, the stranger who became a hero, lived on forever,